This is Roger, a historic working narrowboat. Built of wood in 1936 by Bushell Brothers at Tring, she was used to carry sand and coal for the Harvey Taylor Company of Aylesbury, then by other coal carriers until 1968, mainly captained by Arthur Bray. Having lain derelict for some years, Roger was rebuilt by Rickmansworth Waterways Trust between 1997 and 2001 and became an important part of the Trust's education work. So it was alarming to find in 2011 that significant areas of rot had set in around the bow. Major work was needed if this fine boat was to be properly conserved. We first had to secure the funding. This came from the Heritage Lottery Fund, the Arts Council and Three Rivers District Council, and we're very grateful to them for their vital support to this important project. At last we set off in December 2011 to spend 2 months with the wooden boat builder Jem Bates at Bulbourne, near Tring, only a mile or so from where Roger was built 75 years ago. This short film shows some of the work necessary for this sort of conservation and the skills required to do it. Roger docked in the old dry dock at Bulbourne in early January. The very first requirement is to survey, to establish the extent of the problems and allow detailed planning of the work. Trevor Whitling is an experienced ship surveyor. Trevor, what's the point of a survey? What's the surveyor's job?
A surveyor's job is to give an independent statement on the hull condition. So it's an independent inspection of the hull and to confirm its suitability for canal and river use and insurability. A surveyor is really the eyes for an insurance company who wouldn't come out to the boat themselves. They would employ someone to inspect. So acting on behalf of the insurance company and acting independently on behalf of a boat owner or client.
What's the qualification route to become a surveyor?
There's various ways. You can come through naval architecture at degree level. I was a marine engineer in the Merchant Navy, so I was qualified as chief engineer for steam and motor ships, and the qualifications for that are recognised by the insurance companies, which allows me to survey boats in a self-employed basis.
Trevor, how did you get involved in wooden boats in the first place?
I've been boating all my life, from the Scouts with canoeing and sailing, canal boat holidays as a child. My parents had a boat when I was in the teens. I've had my own boats from the age of 20. My second boat was a wooden boat, and I knew nothing about wooden boats to start with, and I learned pretty quickly. And I had progress as a wooden BCN tug for 22 years and totally restored it during that time. So it's been a learning curve.
Here we are with this wooden historic boat, the Roger. What are you looking for in a boat like the Roger?
I'm looking for defects. Obviously this boat's been thoroughly restored, some 14, 15 years ago. So we're looking for trends of growth of problems. So it's rot, it's split planks, it's loose planks, fixings that are loose or broken. And we're looking to maintain a watertight hull, but we're looking to maintain the correct structure in the boat, strength where needed. Boats tend to hog all on their own. The lack of displacement at the ends and the weight of the engine and the counterblock will naturally make the boat hog. So we're looking for the strength in the boat to resist that tendency. And repairs would need to be thoughtful of what's required and future repairs that will be ongoing further along the line. So repairs have got to be as part of a 10 or 15 or 20 year plan.
The boat's now in the hands of Jem Bates, the master craftsman boat builder.
I started to work in Banbury Dry Dock at Tooley's Yard, and it's a bit of an epicentre for boat building and traditional work. And some of the guys that used to work in the dock in the 40s and the 50s would still come to the gates and talk to us about how they used to build the boats and how they made things easier in those days and give us little tips. They weren't being arrogant about the way they worked, they just wanted to see their sort of family tradition continued. Herbert Tooley would come to the gates of the dry dock. He would say how they'd put the guard irons in the fire to make them more pliable so they could force them around the front end of the boat.
What's the difference between the building process, the restoration process and conservation? How do those skills vary?
Well, I think when we've built boats from scratch, it's been much quicker because you can lay out a whole set of bottoms in a day or 2 at the most. Whereas if I was to replace the bottom or restore the bottom of a boat, I've got to take out all the old material and make good the old to the new. And very often, if I'm involved in a full restoration, I might end up restoring the back end of a boat 1 year, and then the front end of a boat another year, and then the bottom of a boat the following year. All the time you're making good the old to the new, which is quite time consuming, but also you have problems with determining what are the actual lines of the boat. Sometimes it can be better just to do the whole thing all at once and do a full scale restoration, and then interpret those lines and possibly get a more accurate copy of the original. Building from scratch is definitely the quickest. Restoration is going to see you replace large sections of the boat and arguably still end up with something that is virtually a new boat. And then moving on to the conservation, well, really that's work that is going to stop major restoration work from occurring in the future. So we're probably looking at these boats in a lot more detail than they ever were, built for, say, a 10, 20-year working life, and to their credit, lasting 70 odd years. But we're now looking in a lot of detail at where the problems begin, the metal to the wood contact, the fixings that are used, the bedding compounds, some of the modern materials or preservatives that we feel can improve the situation. But at the same time balancing it with what worked well anyway in the past. And I think we have the evidence of this in the structures of the boats that we have left.
The first task is to take templates from the existing structure. This is a requirement especially for conservation projects, where the new material has to be identical to the original so that it all fits and looks the same at the end. It's an important skill, born of long experience and a natural eye. Jem will be replacing the fore-end flashes which have deteriorated badly, as well as the stem post. Today, those templates are being taken, ready to go back to the yard where the new timbers will be cut.
We can either do that by taking a complete template of where the plank is lying on the boat already, and we'd perhaps do that in hardboard or cardboard, or you can use a spiling board and bend that around the boat and measure above and below it at various station marks along that plank. So every foot down the spiling board you'd measure above and below, and then you can transfer that onto timber that we've got at the other yard. Other method might be to bend a piece of plywood around the boat and then glue pieces of wood above and below it, which in a sense is the same thing but quite accurate. And then we can also spile using dividers, which again is a sort of fairly accurate way of translating the curves on the boat to what they would look like as a flat piece of timber. Because of the compound curves, we're not just bending the planks straight round like that. Because of the curve in, you're getting quite a different shape when you lay that piece of timber out flat, and you end up with something that's a bit more like a banana-shaped piece of wood. And so it's quite important that we accurately know where that plank will be in that piece of timber, because we need to avoid the knots and the cracks and the sapwood, and select our spot as carefully as we can.
Jem Bates is nowadays nearly unique among heritage boat builders, in that he cuts his own planks from trees that he collects in himself. 200 years ago this would have been done by 2 men in a saw pit. 100 years ago they'd normally have used a steam-driven bandsaw. Jem has built his own machinery to harness modern technology to this ancient skill. Most of the timber used in boat building is oak. He has to select the logs carefully to make sure they're the right shape and are fully seasoned and sound. Often a flaw only shows itself when the cut has already been made. Today, Jem's cutting the block from which the stem post will be shaped. We can see the way in which the Rogers stem guard iron is being used to give the basic shape. The new post has to be large enough to take it without padding. And this is what gives the bow its distinctive and elegant shape, slightly different for each builder and very much part of the boat. Here's the roughly cut block, which will now be cut down to size and shape. The templates taken earlier from the flashes are being applied to the planks already cut to size. 2-inch thick oak, about 15 feet long and 10 inches wide. A lot of this will be discarded, but we can already see the shape starting to appear. An area of the bottom planking also has to be replaced. Originally of elm, 3 inches thick and cut from large and mature trees to give large planks and so reduce the number needed, the Rogers new bottom planks will be of oak peppy. Elm is now very scarce, and special permission has been given to use this non-traditional material. Here, the newly cut planks are loaded and ready to go up to the dock. The damaged planks have been cut out with a chainsaw, but the new ones will go in with much more care. We're now seeing a very traditional technique. Once the planks for the flashes have been cut, they have to be shaped. In softwood boat building, such as on Chesapeake Bay, planks like this can be forced into shape. But this is oak and has to be steamed. For about an hour for each inch of thickness, and these planks are 2 inches thick. Hot from the steamer, the planks are carried into the dock to be positioned. The old material hasn't yet been removed. The new will be held in place with props braced off the dock walls and cramped over the weekend, before being taken off to allow the next stage of forming. The stem post, having been cut and shaped, now has to be fitted. This shows one of the key differences between boat building and conservation. When building, the hull planks are simply assembled round the stem posts, but in conservation the post has to be fitted into the existing structure. First, the capping, also damaged and due to be replaced, must be removed. With the flashes out of the way, this opens up the area nicely. But the new post has to go in and come out and go in and come out several times, with even the hull planking having to be adjusted to take it. Each time a little more is removed. Overdoing that could be very expensive, but eventually it's in. 2 days' work required, and then the main item has been replaced. Job done. Well, nearly. There's still a great deal of work to do. While all this is going on, the new bottom planks, of 3-inch oak peppy, have been put in, after being cut in the yard from templates taken at the start. The boat has had to be jacked up for this, and the new planks nailed upwards with 12-inch nails like these. Then they're drilled and bolted through the keelson and knees as we see here. The oak planks for the flashes, steamed and then shaped over the old ones, have been taken down, and the old material cut out. They now have to be fitted properly. While this is less exacting than the work on the stem post, it still requires patience, skill, and a fair amount of effort. They have to be offered up, removed, shaped, and offered up again, on both sides, several times, before they can be fitted into place and bolted in. Caulking is a crucial phase of the work. Oakum, the fibres of hemp rope separated, is rolled into a thick cord and placed in the gap between the planks. The gap may have to be opened up a little to get it in. Then it's hammered in, hard, using a caulking iron and hammer, before being coated with marine glue and then blacked with the hull. The caulking not only keeps the water out, it also provides important stiffening of the hull, including the bottoms. It takes one man several days to caulk a boat like Roger, including both the hull seams and the bottom planks. It's not fun, but it's a vital task. In this short film, we've shown the main items of work done by Jen Bates's small team in a damp, dark and very cold dry dock in the winter 2012. There were many smaller jobs to be done as well as these, from bolting and nailing the bottom planks to the chine, cutting out and repairing small areas of the hull and bottoms, replacing quickly right at the end the panelling at the back of the cabin, and replacing completely the protective tin plate sheathing on the bottom plank's end grain. All of these require the skill of the craftsman, and those skills are part of the hidden capacity needed if historic craft like Roger are to be conserved for everyone to use and enjoy in the future.
For this to continue, it needs to be dynamic, it needs to be living. It's important that the skills are carried on and that this boat is not just an inert example in a museum of what it used to be. Because without the skills, without the life going into it and continuing, I think that boat building would die out, and I think that wooden boats then would shortly follow.
Thanks to the generosity of our funders and the skill of the team, Roger can return to her place in the education work of Rickmansworth Waterways Trust, her future assured for a good many years to come.